Hello and welcome back to another episode of Notion Bonsai, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create a Juniper Cascade. Alright, so this is the tree that we're going to be working on here today, and as you can see right off the bat, this tree already has a somewhat natural growth pattern of a cascade bonsai to it, and that's the first thing I'd like to start this video by talking about. When selecting a tree in a garden center or a bonsai nursery, you want to sort of keep the bonsai style in mind as you select some material. It could be a formal upright, informal upright, maybe a clump style, or even a literati bonsai where it's like a slender trunk and has a lot of growth on the top. I don't think it's a good idea to force a tree into a certain way. For example, if a tree looks so much better as a cascade like this one, why would I try and force it into a formal upright this way? It's just really not how the tree would like to grow, if you want to say it like that. It's just not how the tree would look best. And when I seen this tree in a garden center, I knew immediately by looking at it that this would make a wonderful cascade tree. Now, if you really wish to make a cascade bonsai, you can wire a tree down, much like this one here in that pattern, and guide it from a young age to grow as a cascade. But just the first step, if you can find a tree that already looks like a cascade, definitely go for that. So this is just a needle juniper. It's got a lovely root flare at the base here, although there's a little bit of moss growing up the trunk here that I would like to remove. And as I have been fertilizing this tree over the past 1 year, it's got a lot of new healthy growth now. Whenever I got this, the tree looked quite sick as it was neglected in the garden center. So I didn't feel like it was okay to start working on this tree last year when I got this. I really wanted to ensure the tree was in good health before doing any work on it. And now it's like super healthy. So the tools that we'll be using here today are a root hook, a root rake, some root pruning shears, gin pliers, a nylon brush, a wire brush, some wire cutters, branch cutters, and some twig cutters. And if you don't have any of these specialized tools, you can absolutely get by without these. There are alternatives that you can use. For example, instead of a root hook, you could use a chopstick. Instead of this root rake, you could use a garden rake or a bent fork. And then for scissors, you could absolutely get by with an ordinary pair of garden secateurs. Or if you have a really strong pair of scissors, just make sure they're super sharp, because the cleaner the cut when you work on trees, the quicker they heal. So the first thing that we're going to do here is come in with a wire brush and just get rid of the moss that's growing up the trunk. Now, we are repotting this tree today, but I would just like to get the trunk cleaned up before we do that, because if you repot it and then come in and scrub here, as you scrub when it's in the new pot and it's just newly repotted, it'll make the tree wobble a little bit too much, and it can stress the roots of the tree. So it's better to get all the scrubbing done first. And if you are new to bonsai, moss tends to hold a lot of moisture, and when excess moisture is held around these areas, you can get roots forming that you don't want, perhaps higher up on the trunk, as a lot of moisture is held around there. You could possibly get rotting on the trunk, and that's definitely not good. It's okay if moss stays there for a little while, maybe if it's in an exhibition or something, but I don't like it to stay on my bonsai for too long. I think I've got rid of all of the moss on the trunk now. I'm just gonna come back in with the wire brush and begin scrubbing the trunk. And now what I'm doing here is just removing any of the old bark on the trunk. I want to sort of reveal that nice red color underneath. In junipers like this, it's a lot more desirable to have the red color showing on the trunk than it is to have flaky bark that you would commonly see on a pine bonsai. So it's important to know the species that you're working on before you go and scrub the trunk, because if you were to come in with a wire brush like this and start scrubbing away at an old pine bonsai and taking away all of that nice, lovely flaky bark, you could probably end up devaluing the tree quite significantly, as the flaky bark on a pine shows age. So just a little light bit of refinement on the trunk today. I'm not going to go too heavy and scrub every single bit of it. I think I'll come back and do that a different day. But what we're going to do now is give this tree a nice repot. So I'm going to take this tray here. This is just so that I don't make a mess on the table, just to catch any soil that falls out. And we're going to start by taking this tree out of the pot All right, that came out fairly easily from the pot. And when I got this, I think I slip potted it into some bonsai soil because I can see some of my original bonsai soil mix in this here. And over the past 1 year, I can see the roots have done really well. They're not even rotting on the bottom or anything. Now today we're gonna give this a proper repot and we're gonna try and make our way into the very center of the root ball. So I'm just gonna lay the tree on its side. I'm just gonna rake here at the roots with the root hook. It's always great to see really healthy roots like this, and I could probably actually reuse this soil here. Some of you guys were saying in the comments that you shouldn't really bare root a whole tree because it's got a mycorrhiza fungi in it that helps the tree grow and it's needed. I think this is more true with pine bonsai as they really need that mycorrhiza and their own sort of mycelium fungus throughout the thing. I have bare root many junipers before and they have done quite fine, but if you are afraid of fully bare rooting a juniper, by all means you can repot in stages. It won't do the tree any harm. And that's kind of what I did with this tree here. I didn't want to fully bare root this when I got it as the tree was in poor health, so I just slip potted it into a larger pot. I'm going to take the root rake now and just rake the sides. That loosens up really well. I can see lots of sphagnum in here too, and the sphagnum has probably helped a lot in developing lots of these fine fibrous roots. And when working on the roots of a tree, I like to keep a spray bottle handy just to mist the roots as I work on them so that they don't dry out. If the roots of a tree dry out as you're working on them, then they could die off. Now I'm starting to reach the part of the tree where the soil is, and it's starting to get a lot more compact in here. I'm going to switch back to the root hook. And I think this really shows you the benefit of having a free draining soil mix, because the root development in here in 1 year is crazy. There's so many roots all around this. But when you look at the compacted part here, there's no new roots. It's all old roots that are quite dark in color. These lighter color roots here are a sign that they're new. So for anyone that's curious about why we use this stony mixture in bonsai, it's to help grow roots really fast and healthy because it allows lots and lots of oxygen into the roots. Sphagnum moss really does wonders for trees that are sick. If I buy a tree and it's in bad health, the first thing I'll do is plant it into a mix with a lot of sphagnum moss. The sphagnum moss just works like magic and grows lots of healthy roots in a really short space of time. Some people think that putting sphagnum into the roots can provide too much moisture. You can get stuff like root rot. Sphagnum moss is actually antifungal, so I don't see why the roots would rot from using it. Just from my experience anyways. Maybe you guys have experienced something a little different. I'd love to hear in the comments. I'm really into the center of the root ball now, as there's no more of my substrate on the outside here. It's all this sort of composty, compact soil in the center, and it was really pot bound there a second ago as I was working on the middle here. Still kind of is, need to loosen up more here, but we are making good progress on this root ball. Ideally, whenever I repot this, I would like the entire root ball to be that nice composty soil mix that we had on the outside. That way every part of the root ball can really thrive, and then as a result the top of the tree will also begin to thrive. Now I'm not cutting off any roots, all I'm doing is just loosening the old soil and leaving all the roots on the tree. Any roots that are pulled off in the process I'm not too worried about. The tree will still have plenty of roots to supply water to the foliage. I'm not going to bare root this tree today by washing the roots. I would like to keep some of the old soil still on these here. And then every time we repot this, maybe every 2 to 5 years, the roots will get a little bit cleaner and cleaner from that old soil. I'm absolutely in no rush to get this tree into 100% bonsai substrate. It's going to do it no harm to keep a little bit of the old soil on the root ball here. So this is the pot that I have chosen to put this tree into today. It's just an ordinary flower pot. We want to make sure that the pot is high enough so that whenever the tree does cascade, it doesn't hit the surface that it's sitting on. So I've chosen this nice high flower pot to train this tree in for a few years before moving it on to a proper cascade pot, like a beautiful unglazed ceramic one. This pot here was fairly inexpensive, although it doesn't come with any drainage holes on the bottom, so we're gonna have to make a few ourselves. So I've made one hole here in the bottom of the pot. I'm not sure if these little pegs are meant to be knocked out, but they do make great places for holes for a bonsai. And all I did here with the bottom hole is come in with these branch cutters. This looks pretty good to me. So I'm gonna prepare the pot now and get some drainage mesh in this. On second thought here, before I put the drainage mesh in, what I'm gonna do is make 2 of the holes a little bit larger, because in bonsai, pots that are even smaller than this tend to have bigger drainage holes. You want lots of drainage in bonsai, so I feel like these holes are too small. And if I make all of them really big, I feel like the bottom of the pot might lose its integrity a little bit. So I'm just gonna make 2 of the holes quite large. To do that, I'm just gonna come in with the scissors and just cut them a little bit bigger. And there's no problem if the hole isn't a circle either. The mesh will cover this up, no problem. I think I'm actually gonna switch from my nice bonsai scissors to some cheaper scissors because I don't wanna blunt these. The branch cutters are actually doing a really good job compared to the scissors. They just take chunks out at a time. It's not the prettiest, but I think this now will give the tree a lot better drainage than the 4 little holes that were there to begin with. So to wire the mesh into the pot, I'm just using a little bit of scrap wire that I took from the pile of scrap wire that I collect from unwiring trees. I don't think there's any point wasting good wire just to wire some mesh at the bottom of a pot. Just make a little loop like this, and then this will go through one of the holes. And then once it's in like that, on the other side, we just flatten the wire down and cut this just to make it a little bit more neat. Now that there's mesh on all these drainage holes, I'm going to put wire up through the bottom of the pot, and this will aid in wiring the tree in. First, I'm going to measure it here like this. Now I think it's important that when you do feed the wire up through the bottom, you make sure you go through the smallest holes, because these other ones have kind of lost integrity, and if you start tying it in there, it could crack in them areas. So the reason why I left 2 small ones also is to just keep these parts strong when we add wire. Now let's see how this juniper will go into the pot, how it will sit. I'm thinking possibly this kind of angle here, that, and then the cascade will be wired up a little. There is plenty of room in this pot for the cascade to grow lots of new roots. Also, it's good to determine where the front is. I think for a cascade, there can be 2 possible fronts, this way or this way. Either looks great at the moment, but we'll know more once we start styling. So I am going to go in with some new soil for the bottom of the pot. This is just my normal standard bonsai soil mix of pumice, acadama and lava rock. That'll give us lots of good drainage. Then in on top of that, I'm going to add a scoop of the old soil, so it has that nice mycelial fungal network in there. And as this worked so well last time, I'm going to go in with some sphagnum moss. And this really helps promote lots of healthy roots. Works like magic, this stuff. Just going to give this a little mix. There is just one root on the root ball here that I think is really long, and that's going to start winding around the trunk if I plant it back in here. So I'm going to shorten that to half. I can also see a few thick roots inside that there's really no fine feeder roots connected to, so it's okay just to take off that big thick one. I'm going to leave it at that in terms of root pruning. So I can mound it up a little bit more inside. So as I put this in the pot, I'm just twisting it down just to get rid of any air gaps that may be under the root ball. I'm also considering the position and planting angle, looking to make sure it's where I would like it. Get a little bit this way. Let's see now if we can wire this in. I'm going to take the wire around it. Over the top here, I'm just going to take the gin pliers and twist this wire together. Now I don't want the wire to be the only thing that holds the tree in place. I would also like the soil that I put and work in here to support the tree in the position it's in also. Yeah, I'm quite happy with the angle it's at the moment. As you can see here. So just so these roots are really happy, I'm going to put sphagnum all around here. Again with some of the old soil, and then I'm going to come in with some of the new soil. And now just to work this soil in with a chopstick. And I just want to show you guys, I invested in some metal chopsticks. They weren't too expensive. I think these were something like £2 on eBay. The wooden chopsticks can have a tendency to break, and these metal ones are a lot stronger. The idea of working the soil in is to get rid of any extra air gaps and work the soil into the tree, into the position you want it to sit at. So I think that's all I'm going to do to this tree for now. I don't want to put this tree under too much stress by working on the roots and the foliage at the one time, as we could kill the tree. I really want this tree to survive and do well, so we're going to come back a different day to work on the foliage. There's this branch here which I think would make a really good crown for the cascade. We can have like maybe a semi-cascade. So it's like a little bonsai tree on top of the cascade, plus the cascade at the bottom that whooshes down. If you have any suggestions for me before I actually work on the foliage of this tree, please leave them down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you guys think of it. I'm always open to new and different ideas. And all that's left to do now is give this tree a water. And on that, I'm going to end off this video right here. If part 2 of this video happens to come out in the future, I'll leave a link to it up on one of the little YouTube cards. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like down below. It really helps out the channel a lot and the YouTube algorithm. Also subscribe and hit the bell to get updates from whenever I upload a video. If you would like to support me and the things that I do on this channel, consider hitting the thanks button. And to stay updated on all of the things that I do off camera, please follow me on Instagram. It's @NotionBonsai, and you'll be able to check out all of the things that I do on there. But on that, thank you so very much for watching.